Hey guys, and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Specialist Mathematics Paper 1 Tech 3 multiple choice for the QCAA syllabus 2022 paper. Okay, so this one here just has your standard 10 questions. You are given the specialist formula sheet for this particular test here, but no calculator is allowed. Okay. So pretty much here, if you have any questions at all in this video, try and timestamp when you have the questions and pretty much what your question is with each question, and just put it in the comments below, okay? That way it's just easier for me to find, and helps me answer your question as best as I can, okay? But other than that, let's just get straight into it. So, question 1. So, let z equal a plus 3i and w equal -3 plus bi, where a and b are real numbers. If z equals w, then, and then we've got some options here for a and b. Now, this is a ridiculously easy question. We basically just equate these guys here, and we compare the real and imaginary parts. So, z equals w, therefore, a plus 3i equals -3 plus bi, okay? Which means this has to be equal to that. So we know a straight away is -3. So it has to be between A and B, can't be C or D. And we also know here as well that 3 is equal to B in this case here. So in this case here, the correct answer will be B, and that's it. Yeah, so if you have any questions about that one here, leave something in the comments and I'll try my best to answer it. Alright, question 2. Which statement regarding the sample mean is true? The distribution of x is always normally distributed. That's not true because x could represent any distribution pretty much. So if I were to draw a couple, when you sample them, and if the sample is big enough, it will turn into a normal distribution, okay? So if you have x, and if you sample enough of that, that will turn into a normal distribution. The distribution of x bar is always normally distributed. This one is not correct either because they're saying always. It's only when the sample size is big enough. I think when it has to be about 30 roughly. So that one's not correct and that one's not correct either. The value of x bar changes when different samples are selected. That is true. And D, the value of mu changes with different samples are selected. Well, mu is the population average, and if you sample it, that's not going to change the population average. So that one's incorrect. So the correct answer here is C. Okay? Alright, let's move on to question 3. Question 3, a particle travels in a straight line over time t with a constant acceleration, and acceleration is a function of time. Which function could represent the particle's displacement? Xt. Now, the key word here is constant acceleration. So basically, we need to know, alright, position, if you were to differentiate that with respect to time, you're going to get velocity. If you were to differentiate velocity with respect to time, you're going to get acceleration. So basically, we want a function where if we differentiate it twice, we just get like a number here, like 5 or whatever it is, okay? Now, we could play it back and just integrate whatever this is to get an expression for it, but let's just differentiate these guys here and just see what we get. Now, if I differentiate this twice, first derivative of this will just be that, second derivative will be this. That's not constant, so that's incorrect. This one here will turn into 2t, and then that will just turn to 2. So that one straight away is correct. Now there's only one correct answer, so straight away you can say it's B, but I'm going to show you why these other ones are incorrect as well. So here, if I were to differentiate this guy here, first of all I'd have to rewrite this one like this. So if I differentiate that negative one comes down the front, so it'll be negative t to the power of -2. Then if I differentiate that again, that'll be positive 2t to the -3. So again, that's a function, so that one's incorrect. And then this one here, square root of t can be written as t to the power of half. So if you differentiate that, that's going to be a half t to the negative half. And then you have the exact same problem as this guy here because of that negative exponent. So straight away, the answer is going to be B here, okay? Because when you differentiate this function twice, you get a number, which means it's a constant acceleration because this would be your velocity function and this would be your acceleration function, okay? Yeah, any questions about that one, leave something in the comments. Alright, question 4. So question 4 requires a little bit of knowledge to do with induction, but also about your placements with certain substitutions, okay? So when using proof by mathematical induction to prove de Moivre's theorem expressed as, and this is de Moivre's theorem, so basically if you have a complex number in polar form, you raise it to a power, that power can go there, and it multiplies the angle, okay? which statement would be correct in the proof of the inductive step? Now, the inductive step is basically replacing n for k plus 1, okay? So we need to look for an expression like this where they've correctly substituted k plus 1 correctly for here, here, here. I think that's it. I'll just highlight this last bit. There we go. Okay, so straight away, this one's incorrect. There is no k plus 1. There's a k, but there's no k plus 1. This one here has a k plus 1, but it's been done incorrectly. This should be being multiplied. That's incorrect. And that's just a single k, so that's also, well, the whole thing's incorrect. Now, these ones here, both of them have k plus 1s, but look how they've done it. So see here, mainly to do with this side here. I'm just going to highlight, oh, that kind of doesn't really highlight it that well if I highlight the whole thing. I'm mainly looking at this here. So n theta. So if I chuck in n equals k plus 1, I'm going to have k plus 1 times by theta. That's what I've got here. That's not what I have here. So that's incorrect. The rest of that is correct. So the correct answer here is D. Okay, so it's about substitution correctly with the inductive step. Now, they could have made this a bit harder and put some other stuff in there as well, but I think that's hard enough in terms of the question for a multiple choice. Okay, alrighty, question 5. So, 4 random samples of different sizes were taken to estimate a certain population mean. Given an unknown population standard deviation, a 95% confidence interval was calculated for each sample. And we can see all the confidence intervals here, sample 1 to 4. Which sample used the largest sample size? So we need to understand what a confidence interval is. So a confidence interval takes the average and it adds the z-score times by this standard deviation of the population divided by the square root of that particular sample size. So that would be this value here. And then this value here would be the average minus the z-score and that exact same stuff here. Because our formula for a confidence interval is like this. So the plus represents the right-hand side of your confidence interval. So the blue plus, that's the right-hand side. So that's all these guys here. Physical distances. And then the green, the minus, is to the left of it. So that's all these guys here. So now we need to analyze this mathematically because a lot of people get this stuff incorrect. Okay, so here, basically, because the sample size is over a fraction, if n is very large, this entire thing will be very small. It's like, what's bigger, a half or 1 over 200? This one is bigger because this number is smaller. So if you have a larger number in the denominator, it makes the overall term small. So whoever has the largest sample size will have the smallest width in terms of the confidence interval. So the correct answer is going to be sample 1 because that is the smallest width on both sides compared to the rest of these guys here. Okay? And the average is in the middle, so that's how you can tell. So the correct answer here is A. Okay? If you have any questions about that, leave something in the comments and I'll try my best to answer it, okay? Alright, question 6. The Cartesian equation for a sphere with a center -2, 3, -4 and a radius of 9 is. So, a sphere is exactly like a circle. Now, the equation of a circle is, oh, I've kind of botched it. So, the equation of a circle is pretty much something like this, okay? I believe so. So here, these represent the values of your center. So the center of my circle is 2, 4, and the radius is, let's go 3 in this case here. This is my h, this is my k. So in the equation, it's going to appear as -2. So it'll be x minus 2 squared plus, and then y minus 4 squared, and then the radius gets squared, so that's going to be 9. Okay. Now the only difference between this and a sphere is they just have a z as well added onto it, okay? So basically, if you want to answer this question correctly as quickly as possible, is you want to look for the equation, well, it has all these numbers here, but then you want them to be flipped. So here, I'm looking for +2 in the x. So straight away, I know it's between B and D, because that's a +2, that's a +2. It can't be C or A. Now here, 3 has to be negative. Those are both negative. 4 has to be positive because it's negative here. They're both positive. Okay, so it's between B and D. Okay. Now the radius. This value here should be the radius squared. This is actually our radius here, so that's incorrect. This is our radius squared because 9 squared is 81. So the correct answer here is D. Okay. Alright, let's move on to question 7. So, two forces act coherently on a 2 kilo object placed at the origin. So, the magnitude of the acceleration of the object is. Okay, so this is kind of a physics question, but most people should be fine with this if you know your vectors. Okay, so first of all, if I'm pulling this way and this way with equal angle and equal force, it's not going to move up or down. It's just going to move in this direction here because this force here and this force here are going to perfectly cancel each other out. It's like if I'm pulling up with 10 newtons and I'm pulling down with 10 newtons. That's the equivalent of not doing anything to it at all because they fully cancel each other out. Okay? It's the same with gravity. So here, all we need to know is, alright, what is this force here? Now this force in this direction will be the sum of these two components here. Now because they're the same force and they're the same angle, we just need to work out one of these things and times it by 2 because they're going in the same direction. Okay? So here, if you were to think of it like this triangle, this is your opposite, and we know the hypotenuse is 4. So here, we know that it's going to be, if I were to draw the triangle like this, that's 30, that's 4. So here, if I go sine theta is opposite on hypotenuse, if I want to know the opposite side, it'll be the hypotenuse, so 4 sine of the angle, so 30 degrees. So that is going to be the component's magnitude for both of these guys here. Now if you want the overall one, which is this guy here in the green, you need to add these guys together. So you need to times them by 2. Okay? Now that's your force. Now a lot of people put that as the acceleration. That's incorrect. Okay? Now sine of 30 degrees is a half. Times a half by 2. That just turns into 1. So the force is 4. Now we also got told the mass of the object. The mass of the object is 2 kilos. Now we know F equals ma, so acceleration will be force divided by mass. So 4 divided by 2 gives you 2. So the correct answer here is A, 2 meters per second, okay? Because that's the units for acceleration. Most people get this one here because they confuse sine and cos, and most people get this because they write 4 down, okay? So the correct answer here is A, okay? If you have any questions about this one here, leave something in the comments and I'll try my best to answer it, okay? Alright, question 8. Use the substitution u equals tan x to determine this. So, if I go u equals tan x, I can't just sub in my integral here because I have a dx and I have an x here. So I need to replace everything in terms of u. So here I need to figure out a du expression. So differentiate this side here, so du dx. And the derivative of tan x is sec squared x, which is really convenient for us. So if we want to get dx by itself, so dx is du over sec squared x. So if we substitute this in, oh, not the whole thing, just here, and if we substitute this into there, this is what we get for our integral. So we get the integral of u sec squared x du over sec squared x, and they cancel out. So we'll just have the integral of u du, okay? So if we integrate this, add 1 to the power, divide by the new power, so we get u squared divided by 2 plus c. Now we know u is tan, so we have tan squared x over 2 plus c. So the correct answer here is B. I think that's pretty straightforward, okay? Again, they gave you a hint here. They could have made this harder by just saying determine this integral, but because of that hint, it made it a bit easier, okay? Alright, this one here, question 9. A random variable x is normally distributed with a mean of 36 and a standard deviation of 4. The respective mean and standard deviation of the distribution of x from repeated random samples of size 9 are. So basically, we've got the population average is 36, and the standard deviation average of the population is 4. Now, if we take a sample, the sample population usually is the same as this, so we assume it's still 36. So pretty much we know it's going to be between C and D because those are the only ones that have 36. Okay. Now, the standard deviation of your sample, so I'm just going to write like this, is your standard deviation of your population divided by the square root of your sample size. So here we had 4, but the sample size here is 9. So we have a square root of 9 on the bottom, so it's going to be 4 over 3. Now you can see here why they put 4 and 9, because 9, you would pick that, but it's actually going to be D because you have a 3 on the bottom because of that square root. Okay. Alrighty. Last question. So a plane is represented by the equation x minus 2z equals 5. A vector normal to this plane is. So here we can see this plane is in this form here. A plus by plus cd equals d. Cz equals d. Now the normal vector is the coefficients of these guys here. So a, b, and c. So in this case here, our normal vector is, I'll just write down here. Our normal vector is 1. The y component isn't shown here, so it's 0. And the z component is negative 2. So that is the correct answer, which is C. Okay. If you have any questions about this exam here, leave something in the comments and I'll try my best to answer it. But otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Okay.